Staring vacantly out the window, the angry mother stewed in her car. It had already been 20 minutes since she had parked in the quiet Starbucks parking lot. Someone piqued her attention. Her eyes were fixated on the girl as she smiled at each passing car. Forcing a buried breath, she whispered as quietly as possible, barely making any sound at all. A fake smile. A fake person. Her heart was palpitating rapidly, and her blood was boiling over. Over the course of the last several years, Cherry Markhams had single-handedly led a fulfilling life as a devoted mother of two residing in Miami, Florida. She worked part-time as an administrator from her home office, while Jason worked as a contractor. The family had always managed to make ends meet, despite times toughening by the day. It was extremely challenging for Sherry to imagine the manner in which her entire life would soon be flipped upside down. In Jason's back pocket, Sherry found a crumpled receipt one harrowing day while in the midst of doing the family's laundry. On his way to work at a local construction site, he often stopped by Starbucks for coffee in preparation for his tiresome and laborious days on site. Despite this, she was never sure about something that had to do with the added service charge. It would be of utmost importance for her to compare it to the credit card start later on. Her interest was grabbed this particular time, so she decided to go ahead and double-check. Her credit card history indicated an additional charge from Starbucks, in conjunction with the receipt she found earlier that same day. The dates didn't correspond with one another. In an instant, Cherie's beloved husband seemed to be consistently tipping exorbitant amounts of their hard-earned money. She racked her brain to devise a reasonable explanation. She was totally aware of the mounting uncertainty and apprehension slowly polluting her once crystal-clear mind. Could he have been involved in an affair? Despite her concerted efforts, she was totally unable to rid herself of the crippling anxiety caused by her unsettling discovery. So Sherry decided to pay Jason's favorite Starbucks branch a much-needed visit to find out the truth once and for all. Upon approaching the drive-through window, she immediately took notice of Jenna, a beautiful and friendly waitress in the prime of her life. As Cherie's mind immediately gravitated to the worst possible scenario, her husband had been consistently flirting with the attractive employee. Worry consumed all aspects of her life. The waitress, Jenna, appeared to have been tipped a whole lot extra by Jason. Seeing her husband's uncharacteristic display of generosity, Cherie was entirely perplexed. The receipt and the tips both weighed on Cherie, so she, in a fit of disbelief, confronted Jason. Who was this Jenna? What could possibly be a valid reason for giving notable amounts of their hard-earned money away to a total stranger? When Jason eventually returned home that fateful evening, Cherie immediately confronted him about the receipt. Jason was shocked beyond belief and completely denied even having the slightest of clues as to what she was referring to. He insisted that he had left neither Jenna nor anyone else, for that matter, any inflated tips. She was unsure of what to think, feeling a mixture of relief and confusion. His surprise at her accusation led him to deny knowing anything about what she was going on about. Cherie could not and would not believe that her beloved husband would ever dare to lie to her, but her ocean of doubts continued to plague her every waking moment. After returning to the Starbucks, Cherie approached Jenna's drive-through window to investigate the situation further. After watching her closely, she turned to the other. "So fake!" she cried out and slammed down on the brakes. How could a total stranger cause her so much grief? In order to confront the youthful waitress about the charges to her credit account, she gathered all her bravado to make her move. The Starbucks branch anxiously waited for Cherie as she sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel firmly, causing all the veins in her hands to bulge in obvious rage. Her heart thudded like a war drum and with anger and anxiety flooding her entire body, she had no idea what to expect. As she stared in defeat at Jason's receipt, she couldn't stop thinking about how many secrets he may or may not be keeping from her. Any semblance of trust in Jason was being flushed out of her mind rapidly. Cheryl took a deep breath before opening the car door. She was going to confront Jenna and get the answers she needed. Her mind was flooded with all kinds of scenarios and possibilities as she walked to the drive-through window. What would she do if Jason was seeing this girl behind her back? What if he was spending their money on her? The sound of her footsteps echoed in her ears as she approached the counter, and her heart pounded louder with each passing second. Jenna turned around, a polite smile plastered on her face, not recognizing the woman who had been watching her from afar. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Jenna asked, her voice filled with warmth and professionalism. Cherry struggled to maintain her composure, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I need to talk to you about something," she managed to say, her eyes locked with Jenna's. Jenna's smile wavered slightly, sensing the urgency in Cherry's voice. "Of course. What can I do for you?" There was no turning back now. She had Jenna just where she wanted her. Cherry leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a hushed tone. "I noticed that my husband has been tipping you excessively. Can you explain why?" Jenna's eyes widened in surprise, clearly caught off guard by the accusation. I'm sorry. I don't understand." "Your husband?" Now Cherie was becoming slightly irritated. It seemed like Jenna was playing a game of ignorance. Cherry's frustration grew. "Yes, my husband, Jason. He's been coming here every morning and leaving you generous tips." "Why?" Jenna's expression shifted from surprise to a mix of confusion and concern. "Ma'am, I get tips from lots of people, but I have no idea why your husband would be doing that. I'm just an employee here, doing my job." Cherry's mind raced, searching for answers. Could Jenna be telling the truth? Was there another explanation for the mysterious tips? She studied Jenna's face, looking for any sign of deception or guilt, but all she saw was a look of embarrassment and anger. Realizing she had jumped to conclusions without concrete evidence, Cherie's anger began to dissipate, replaced by a sinking feeling of doubt and regret. I'm sorry," Cherie stammered, her voice tinged with a mix of embarrassment and regret. "I shouldn't have accused you without knowing the facts. It's just, I found a receipt in my husband's pocket, and I thought—" Jenna looked at her and then blurted, "Lady, I'm really busy. If you don't mind, I have customers waiting." Cherry eventually left, but she still had a nagging feeling at the back of her mind. To her, Jenna was being very vague and evasive. Maybe she was hiding something, and Cherry noticed Jenna's eyes widen when she mentioned Jason's name. She must have hit a nerve somehow. That was not a normal reaction. Cherry's job was not done. Next, she was going to confront her own husband and hear what he had to say for himself. As Cherie drove home, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She needed to confront Jason about the receipt and the mysterious tips. She needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. When she arrived home, the house was eerily quiet. The kids were still at school, giving Cherie the perfect opportunity to have a private conversation with her husband. She found Jason in their bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, lost in thought. His face lit up with surprise when he saw her. "Hey, babe, what's up?" he asked, his voice masking any hint of guilt. Cherry wondered why he was sitting in deep thought. What or who was he thinking about? Cherry closed the door behind her, casting a shadow over the room. Her voice was calm but determined. "Jason, we need to talk. I found a receipt in your pocket today from Starbucks, and there's something strange about it." Jason's eyes darted around the room, his expression shifting from surprise to unease. He tried to compose himself, but the guilt was written all over his face. "What are you talking about, Cherry?" he replied, his voice faltering slightly. Cherry took a step closer, her eyes locked onto his. "Don't lie to me, Jason. I saw that you've been tipping the waitress, Jenna. Extra amounts. What's going on? Why would you do that?" Jason's face paled, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. He stumbled for words, struggling to come up with an explanation that could appease Cherry's suspicions. She looked at him and could see him struggling. And then he said, "Yes, it's extra, but only because she's a sweet, friendly girl, and it looks like she goes to college, so I thought the extra tips might come in handy for her." "Why is that something that you have to worry about? You have 2 kids of your own that you need to be taking care of." Cherie was boiling with anger. Jason sheepishly looked down and apologized. He promised that it wouldn't happen again, but Cherie wasn't convinced that the matter was over. Something still didn't add up. Cherry wasn't so sure if she believed her husband. It did sound like a plausible explanation, but she couldn't help but still feel uneasy and skeptical about this whole situation. Just the way both of them seemed a bit too nervous when she brought up the issue. Cherry wasn't born yesterday. She could easily sense if something was going on. Refusing to let the matter rest, Cherry made up her mind to return to Starbucks and confront the alleged culprit, Jenna. As she pulled up to the drive-through window, her heart raced with anticipation. When Jenna appeared, Cherry confronted her directly, accusing her of stealing her credit card information and adding a $10 tip for herself each time Jason made his regular coffee run. Taking a deep breath, Cherry pushed open the car door and marched towards the drive-through window. She could feel the tension building inside her as she approached. Jenna, the young waitress she suspected of foul play, looked up from the cash register, a surprised expression on her face. Cherry's voice was steely as she confronted Jenna again. "Jenna?" Jenna nodded hesitantly, her eyes widening with recognition. Yes? Can I help you?" Cherry leaned closer to the window, her voice laced with accusation. "I'm here to ask about that receipt in my husband's pocket again. I looked at it again, and something just doesn't make sense about it." Jenna's eyes darted around nervously, her hands fidgeting with the cash register drawer. I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't know what you're talking about." Cherry's eyes narrowed, her frustration growing. "Don't lie to me. I know what you've been doing. You've been stealing from us." Jenna's face paled, and she stammered, I didn't mean to. It was just extra tips. I thought no one would notice." Cherie's voice rose with indignation. "Extra tips? You were giving yourself a $10 tip every time my husband ordered his coffees, thinking he wouldn't notice. How dare you?" Jenna's voice trembled as she pleaded, "Please, ma'am, don't take legal action against me. I was just trying to make ends meet. I didn't think anyone would find out. Your husband is a great guy." Cherie's anger surged, her sense of justice overpowering any sympathy she may have felt. "You think stealing is justifiable because times are tough, and how dare you mention my husband in this? You've crossed a line, Jenna. I won't let you get away with it." To her shock and anger, Jenna confessed that she had been stealing from Cherry by adding a $10 tip to her own account every time Jason visited. Without another word, Cherry turned on her heels and stormed into the Starbucks, demanding to speak with the manager. The manager, a middle-aged man named Mr. Anderson, appeared concerned as Cherry recounted her discovery and confronted Jenna's deceitful actions. "I am appalled by Jenna's behavior," Mr. Anderson said, his tone grave. "We will investigate this immediately, And if her actions are true as you've described, she will be terminated. Sherry nodded, her determination unwavering. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. But this can't end here. People need to know that they can be robbed even while getting a simple cup of coffee. I want to post a warning online. Jenna was sobbing. Please don't. My mother is going to kill me. I promise I won't do it to anyone else. You've done enough, Jenna. Please keep quiet, Mr. Anderson told her. Mr. Anderson understood the gravity of the situation and agreed to Sherry's request. Together, they compiled a detailed account of what had transpired, emphasizing the importance of staying vigilant while using credit cards. Jenna sat there listening to what she had done. She had stolen $240 from them in the space of a month. She was full of regret. She didn't think she would get caught for such small amounts. Sherry wanted to protect the same thing from happening to other people, so she had to share the issue of that Starbucks branch. The customer is always right. As the story was shared online, it quickly gained traction, serving as a cautionary tale for others. Sherry's bravery in confronting the dishonest waitress garnered praise and support from the online community. Jenna was suspended from Starbucks, and the incident served as a stark reminder to others in similar positions of trust. They checked surveillance footage, and she was found doing the same thing to another customer. Sherry's actions had consequences beyond her own personal situation. The Starbucks management took the incident seriously and implemented stricter protocols to prevent such thefts in the future. But Sherry couldn't help but still be suspicious of her husband, Jason. Why had Jenna targeted him specifically? And was it just theft or something else entirely? Was Jason hiding something from her after all? There was only one way to find out. She needed to make sure that there wasn't something else going on. Sherry couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something more sinister was at play. Despite Jenna's confession and the resolution at Starbucks, Sherry couldn't shake off the sense of betrayal. Late one night, after their children were asleep, Sherry mustered the courage to confront Jason. She found him sitting in their dimly lit living room, engrossed in his phone. His expression quickly shifted from surprise to concern as Sherry approached him. "Jason, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. Jason looked up, his eyes filled with worry. "What's wrong, Sherry? Is everything okay?" Sherry took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "I need to know the truth, Jason, about you and Jenna. She mentioned you." Jason's heart began to race. Jason's eyes widened, and a flicker of guilt passed over his face. "What are you talking about? There's nothing between me and Jenna. I told you. She was just stealing from us." Sherry hesitated, her mind racing. Could she trust Jason's words? Her intuition told her there was more to the story, that he was hiding something. She needed to uncover the truth. Sherry took a seat next to Jason, her gaze fixed on his face. "I've been feeling so unsure lately, Jason. That Starbucks incident, it just doesn't add up. Why did Jenna target you specifically? Why did she feel comfortable stealing from us?" Jason's eyes darted away, unable to meet Sherry's unwavering gaze. "I honestly don't know, Sherry. I had no idea she was doing that until you confronted her." Sherry's voice grew more desperate. "But why, Jason? Why did she choose you? Did you have any kind of relationship with her, even if it was just emotional?" Jason's shoulders slumped, and he let out a defeated sigh. "Sherry, I have to be honest with you." The moment Sherry heard those words, her heart began to beat very fast. "I did have some conversations with Jenna at the drive-thru. They were innocent, just friendly exchanges while I waited for my coffee. But I swear, nothing more than that." The weight of his confession hung heavy in the air. Cherry felt a mixture of relief and sadness wash over her. Her worst fears weren't entirely realized, but there was still a breach of trust between them. "I appreciate your honesty, Jason," Cherry said, her voice trembling. "But how can I be sure that you're telling me the whole truth? I need to know if there's anything else I should be aware of." Jason reached out, taking Cherry's hand in his. "Cherry, I promise you, there's nothing else. I never had an affair with Jenna or anyone else. I made a mistake by engaging in those conversations, and I regret it deeply. You and our children mean everything to me." Cherry stared into Jason's eyes, searching for any signs of deceit. She wanted desperately to believe him, to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. But doubt still lingered, and she knew it would take time and effort to heal their relationship. "I want to believe you, Jason," Cherry said, her voice filled with both vulnerability. But Cherry couldn't ignore the lingering doubts that were still in her mind. No matter how hard she tried to get rid of them, it stayed there. Her whole world had been turned upside down because of this girl, and now she couldn't even trust her husband anymore. How had everything turned out so bad for them? Cherry's mind was racing with all kinds of thoughts. She didn't know who to trust. Her husband seemed like he was trying to make things right. But the fact that he had lied to her in the first place didn't sit well with Cherry. So there was only one thing left to do. She wasn't going to stop until she found out the truth. But maybe there was one more thing to do. As soon as Jason fell asleep, she snatched his phone from the nightstand and went downstairs. There, she went through all his contacts, messages, and call logs. She didn't find anything suspicious. It looked like he wasn't cheating on her after all. Was he telling the truth? Cherry was left with more questions than answers, but she knew that the only way to let go of the doubts is to believe her husband and work on their trust issues. That would be one way to move forward from this mess. It would be a difficult process to regain someone's trust, but Cherry was determined to make things work. Cherry and Jason started going to couples therapy to try and work out the issues their marriage was facing. It was difficult at first, but with regular appointments, things were starting to look up for them. Jason admitted guilt and resolved to do better to make the marriage work. What happened was his fault, after all, and he put his family in harm's way. She was happy that she managed to uncover the truth about Jenna before it was too late. Who knows? Maybe she had planned on stealing bigger amounts of money. It could have turned out so much worse for them. Hopefully, Jenna would learn her lesson and not try to steal from anyone again, and Cherry was going to see that it never happened again. The vigilant woman Cherry was sharp on her toes to prevent Jenna from stealing any more from anyone. Her husband was also embarrassed that he had been tricked by a teenager. Through it all, Cherry remained resolute, her determination to safeguard her family's well-being stronger than ever. She had confronted the dishonesty head-on and had made a difference. 1 cup of coffee. Jenna was visibly shaken and pleaded with Cherry not to involve the authorities. She admitted to her wrongdoing, begging for forgiveness. She confessed that she had been stealing Cherry's credit card information and taking advantage of Jason's rush to notice the unauthorized charges. Her actions were fueled by a desperate need for extra money, but she never intended for things to escalate to this extent. Although empathetic, Cherry knew that she had to take action. She approached Jenna's manager with her husband and explained the situation, urging them to address the issue. Jason was angry and caused a scene inside the coffee shop. Recognizing the gravity of the theft, the manager made the difficult decision to terminate Jenna's employment. It had to be done. Feeling a mixture of relief and sadness, Cherry left the Starbucks that day, her heart heavy with the weight of the situation. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just witnessed the unraveling of someone's life. It was up to her. She knew she had the power to either give Jenna another chance or fire her. Jenna came to Cherys's house the next day, begging for mercy. Furious, Cherie listened as Jenna pleaded with her not to take legal action. Tears streaming down her face, Jenna revealed her desperate situation and how she had fallen into a cycle of theft to make ends meet. Cherie's anger began to soften as she realized the circumstances that had driven Jenna to this point. Although Cherie's anger and betrayal still burned within her, she took a deep breath and considered the situation. Realizing that Jenna was young and perhaps misguided, Cherie decided not to press charges but demanded immediate action from the Starbucks management. It was a tough decision as a woman, but she requested that they terminate Jenna's employment to prevent her from victimizing others. The Starbucks manager was shocked by the revelation and deeply apologetic. They assured Cherie that the necessary steps would be taken, and Jenna would be dismissed immediately. Grateful for Cherie's understanding and empathy, the manager also agreed to post a warning about credit card theft and the importance of vigilance for all Starbucks customers. Word of the incident began to spread through social media and local news outlets. Cherie's story served as a cautionary tale, reminding people to be cautious about their personal information and vigilant in protecting themselves from such fraudulent activities. The online post gained traction, generating a significant response from people who shared similar experiences or expressed gratitude for the heads-up. But would it stop the desperate staff? Though shaken by the incident, Cherie found solace in knowing that she had taken action and prevented Jenna from causing further harm. She and Jason learned to communicate better, reassuring each other of their commitment to their family. Over time, they rebuilt the trust that had been momentarily shattered. Cherie always checked her statements from then on. "Let's just start having our coffee at home," she suggested. As for naughty Jenna, the consequences of her actions served as a wake-up call. She faced the loss of her job, regret, and the understanding that her choices had serious repercussions. Determined to turn her life around, she sought professional help so she could continue her studies and get back out into the working world. She is banned from Starbucks for life.